Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of EETV, where I'm trying to bring you everything in entertainment. And I am back after taking care of some family business. Like I put in my post 2 weeks ago, I am reviewing Alphacore #1, written by Chuck Dixon, art by Joe Bennett. And I have to say this, Chuck Dixon tells an excellent story, in my opinion. We get to, the story is good. And you know the story is good when you want to learn more about the characters. You want to learn more about why Brian Solari is the way he is, why Braxwell is the way he is, why Ingrid Valdez is the way she is. He tells the story in such a way that you know what Alphacore's motives are, what their goals are, and what they're trying to protect. The antagonists of the story are Michael Copper and Lily Ranashi, who first made their appearance in ISOM #1. You get to see what they're working towards. Now, it's still a little bit secretive what's going on, but you get to see what they're trying to accomplish as far as secondary goals, so you can kind of figure out what they're trying to get at overall. But when you read the story, you know that they're just trying to have Alphacore be out of the way, because Alphacore is a big obstacle for them and their operation. And this is clearly detailed in this story. All of the characters that make appearances here, you get to see how they're connected to the story. The setting that Chuck Dixon has set forth is very clear. You get to see that not everything is well in Floral Park, Texas. And you get to see what kind of opposition that Alphacore is facing, because Alphacore is just not facing opposition when it comes to supervillains as far as excepts are concerned. They're also, you could say that they're fighting a war on two fronts, and they're having to deal with things in such a manner where they have to stay in the middle and kind of walk the razor's edge while getting things done, because they are fighting a war on two fronts here. Chuck Dixon details this in such a way that it keeps the story interesting, and you, by the end of the book, you want to see more. You want to know what everybody's background is, what got them to this point, and if the Great War of Separation that Goodien mentioned in ISOM #2 has anything to do with how the setting of Florist Park, Texas is now, and why Alphacore is facing it. It's a good story. Joe Bennett's art, as always, is excellent. Everything is detailed. There are multiple splash pages in here, and it's just wonderful. And it doesn't always have to be action. Like the very first splash page that shows the police surrounding the bank. I mean, everything is so detailed with the lighting from the police lights and the weapons of the SWAT team and their vehicles, and the look of concern and battle preparedness on the face of all those police officers. It's just great. And this book just gets you ready. Now, just like Eric July mentioned, this is the first non-ISOM property, and I can see why it was successful, because the story just keeps you that interested. By the time you get to the end of the book, you know, you want to learn more, but the book is over. And I can't wait to see what's happening in Alphacore #2 whenever that gets released. I mean, let's just say this, Alphacore lives up to its name. You find out why it's called the Alphacore, and Alphacore situations add more depth to the characters. And the supervillains are not their only battle, which I mentioned before. The supervillains are not their only battle, what they have to do. And also, Alphacore being who they are, you get to see these characters and how Chuck Dixon wrote them, so much so that Alphacore inspire others that are around them, that are not necessarily part of the Alphacore, to do better. And also, if you're wondering about their powers, you get to see Alphacore's powers on full display, helping the public, helping Florist Park, Texas, and keeping it safe from the supervillain excepts. And I'll give you some light spoilers here. Alphacore is more so used as a battering ram when it comes to crime. Alphacore is a police force in Forest Park, Texas, and they are only called when an accept is doing a crime. And so much so that Brian Solari, the leader of Alphacore, kind of jumped the gun, and he stops an attempted bank robbery because a bank robber was trying to keep the police at bay and took a young lady hostage. And Brian Solari masterfully disarms the criminal, able to take the device off of the bank robber, and with his super strength, he's able to toss the device away where it causes no collateral damage, no property damage, and he saves the woman, gets the man, and after all this is over, the criminal is not harmed, no property or collateral damage to speak of, and none of the police officers had to risk their lives. But yet the head of police that was there at the time was very angry with him because he told him he can only call when it's a freak call, which means not accepts are not always looked upon with the most regard. You know, there's a lot of bias there in Florida Park, Texas, when it comes to the accepts. And this is why I meant why they're fighting a war on two fronts. And you get to see that very early on into the story, so you can see what kind of setting they're in and how they have to operate. And there are limitations of what they can do because they're not military, they're police officers. Even though Brian Solari and Braxwell are former military, but they have to go about doing things in the right way. And Ingrid Valdez, she is their lead investigator. She was brought onto Alphacore because of her investigative skills, and this is what Brian Solari mentioned in ISOM number 2. And I'll just have to say a shout out for Chuck Dixon with his humor, the except with the fire powers, Billy Bob Quinn, BBQ. I think that was a nice touch right there. So we go about this journey. Alphacore loses some things. I'm not going to say much because this is like spoilers. Alphacore loses something what's important to them, and through their investigative prowess, they're able to find out that Michael and Lillian were the ones pulling the strings and why they lost what they lost. So Alphacore seems to be a formidable opponent for both Michael and Lillian, and I'm interested to see how are they going to go about battling each other, and what Michael and Lillian are going to do to battle Alphacore, and what Alphacore is going to do to battle them, because they have to stay in some sort of limitation, otherwise they could get shut down. The story that Chuck Dixon wrote is very good, and just like he said in the interview with Eric July, this story is definitely reminiscent of a buddy cop film, because there was a scene where Brian Solari had to go see the chief of police, and that scene just reminded you wholeheartedly of a buddy cop film. You have the seriousness of what is going on in Flores Park, Texas, but there's also humor in this as well, which I find very good, and I cannot wait to see more. Now, another thing that made this story great is just the distinct personalities of Alphacore. So Larry seems to be straight and to the point because he's ex-military, and he just about getting the job done and what's best for the overall general public. Braxwell, on the other hand, is very stoic. He does not speak much, and he's all about business. While Valdez, on the other hand, she's very calculating, intelligent, but at the same time, she doesn't back down from anything. And those three distinct personalities come together to make what is known as the Alphacore. Now, I like the way Chuck Dixon did that with the personalities of the characters, because just like Alphacore, the antagonist team of both Michael and Lillian. They complement each other as well, with Michael more so being laid back, but he's about getting the job done, but he's more so laid back. And then Lillian, on the other hand, is more so business up front and getting the job done, while Michael's more laid back. And I like, because it makes for some great banter with them. And if you look at how they talk and they speak to one another and how they interact with one another, you could that they're not related, but just looking at the dialogue both Michael and Lillian have with each other, it's like a brother and sister dynamic, or an old married couple. Even though I think they're not in a relationship. I have to read the book just one more time. I've already read it 3 times, but I was looking for other elements of the story. But the way how Michael and Lillian play off of each other, you would think that they're either brother or sister, or like a really, really old married couple, because they are just playing off of one another and they're just trying to get their point across, which I really like. And I'm glad to see something like this, because when you have a story like this, this is something completely new, and you don't have any limitations as far as canon is concerned, because the canon only started a year ago with ISO number 1 and 2, so they're still establishing everything. So we are treated to something to see how far they're going to take this story, and I think that is good, and it really shows. You don't know what they're going to do next. I mean, you could speculate and then have an idea, but at the same time, you want to see if you're right or if they take a different direction. So it's definitely what is needed. So I do applaud the Rippaverse, Chuck Dixon and his excellent storytelling, Joe Bennett and all the other artists that work with their excellent artwork. This artwork was so good. And then, just like with all my reviews, the quality of the paper was great. The book was very sturdy. Doesn't feel like it's going to fall apart. The cover art for cover D, which I greatly enjoyed. That's why I purchased it. I like it. And I'm just interested to see what is going to transpire with the Alphacore and what's going to happen. One other thing, though, if you've been paying attention to the interviews and everything that's going on, there is a twist in this story. There is a twist. You think that somebody's going to join the Alphacore, but they're not, and that's a twist. And then something happens to that character, but let's just say that character was inspired by Alphacore. So I like that Alphacore is inspiring so much that people that think that they're not good enough would actually step forward and try to help out. And that's definitely what I want to see in a hero story. Somebody, because that's what makes a hero a hero. Are you inspiring others? Others trying to do better? And it's just good. It is good to see this here. And I definitely want to see what's going on with the antagonists, both Michael and Lillian, to see just how far they're willing to take it to get their mission accomplished, to get rid of Alphacore. So that's all I have for this one. I don't want to go too deep into it because I don't want to spoil Alphacore number 1 for any of those who are still reading it or have not received your books yet. Like, share, and subscribe if you feel like it. I'll see you in the next one. Take care, everybody.